think food should be a priority, mainly because it's something that we have to do. We have to eat.
Everybody eats. You know, if you ask people, oh, what did you do today? Well, I woke up, had some breakfast, went to work, and went to lunch and came home, then we cooked some dinner. Like, it's constantly on our mind all the time. It's not this sort of opt-out, right? You can opt out of bicycle commuting, joining a fitness center, walking 10,000 steps a day, whatever, all of that you can opt out of, but eating you cannot.
We've all heard the adage, you are what you eat, and I think we're learning more and more about how important that is.
The food you eat right now becomes a part of you 45 minutes later. So when you think about what you eat, you think, do I want to become that box of macaroni and cheese, or do I want to become a beautiful garden salad?
We're so busy, there's such an expectation for people to be constantly busy, constantly doing. We just get so overwhelmed that we get into this like chronic stress state. The busier we get, the harder it is to eat healthy, and the easier it is to get in a cycle of being addicted to unhealthy foods.
It amazes me that we put more concern into buying a 72-inch flat screen TV than we do into what goes into our bodies.
And yet our car and our stroller and our phone do not literally make up the cells of our body. It's our food, it's what we're consuming, the liquids in the food that we put in our body that build the cells of our body.
A lot of our health issues are related around the fact that people just don't have access. They don't have fresh produce. They don't have these things in their immediate areas.
Because it's simply way less convenient to go to farmers markets, to grow your own food, to shop at neighborhood farm stands, to join a CSA, than shopping at a supermarket.
The greatness of a country is based on the greatness of the people. And if the people are constantly sick, overweight, tired, just listless, not able to meet their potentials, then that's going to reflect on the entire country.
So something that I think has been really amazing in Indianapolis is that you have momentum around food, not just in areas of society that are really privileged, but also in a lot of areas that have been underserved. People in every sector of Indianapolis are thinking about food and thinking about doing it differently.
There's a food movement. There's 4 different strands of that movement. One is the hunger and social justice aspect, which is there are hungry people in our city that need to be fed. The other is really this idea that sustainability in terms of ecology is important to a lot of folks, and that local food and healthy food, organic food, etc., is better for the environment. The third one is really around health, that food and healthy and local food, eating well, has a dramatic impact on your personal health. A lot of hospitals, a lot of healthcare institutions are interested in food now, even prescribing food as medicine. And then there's food as economic development, which is the job creation, creating value from this food strategy, and creating community development also. What I think has changed in the last couple years is that those different silos are now talking to each other.
You can even look 15 years ago to 10 years ago, the amount of awareness of this was nil.
There's so many problems. It's very, very easy to get overwhelmed by what's wrong, and even to get so focused on the problem that we forget to look at the solution.
You know, there is a critical mass of this kind of work starting to build momentum, and it's very exciting to see it all coming together.
There's this growing realization that all of those strands are connected, and that you can't just have the foodies who want to eat the latest microgreen or healthy local food. That needs to be connected to the neighborhood resident that also has a vacant lot, has some time on their hands, needs a job or needs some economic opportunity in their neighborhoods. And those things are totally connected. We can leverage all of that into an actual sustainable food system for Indianapolis.
We don't really sit down and think about what we're eating, where it came from, who grew it, what kind of sun was it, who watered it, would they pour on it, what animal visited it occasionally.
I don't want to get all conspiracy theorists or weird on anything, but it's like, why did we get away from that? If you ask your grandparents what an organic vegetable is, you mean vegetables?
We are overfed, but yet malnutrition. Okay, that's the easiest way to scientifically look at that. All right, what are we eating? What is in our food system? And why are those two things coexisting at the same time? All right, it has to do with nutrient density of food, of which you're never going to get out of mass agriculture.
There's not a lot of people in the local food economy or business that are making it rich.
I don't like seeing farmers being put at the bottom of the line, making the least amount of money out of the whole chain. I feel like they deserve a lot more in our city.
Purposeful poverty, I think, should be the new agricultural term. Okay, that if you think you're going to get in this to make a whole bunch of money, you're crazy.
The strategy has to be about making sure that the product is available and at a certain price that people can afford, and it is local food. Pioneer Pond is a great example of that.
He's taking raising protein and doing it almost on a factory scale level, but with ethics, and proving that it can be financially viable and that model can work for farmers. You'll see other farms start falling in line with what he's doing.
We pasture raise chickens, pork, and beef. We also do our own processing, and we do our own distribution. Read The Omnivore's Dilemma in 2006, which really kind of opened my eyes to a lot of the problems with the food system. Monoculture, environmental degradation, and monopolies, really bugged me. The idea that there's so much concentration in ownership that the poor farmer is getting squeezed on both sides. He can't control his inputs, and he can't control the price that he sells the product for. And I thought something needed to be done.
We rotate these guys once a day. So every day we're putting them on fresh grass, and we try and estimate how much they have eaten so we can determine how much ground we want to give them. The nice thing about having the polywire is that it allows us to be flexible. So certain times of year there's going to be more grass, we can make a smaller paddock. Other times of the year there's going to be less grass, we can make a larger paddock. As they grow, their food needs are going to increase, so we can make a larger paddock. One of the big things in this is flexibility, as few permanent structures or fences as possible, and just keep everything moving so that they're always on fresh grass, they're always eating worms and bugs, and they eat the non-GMO feed as well, but a big part of their diet comes from just foraging, and their food is inside, they'd rather be outside. They'll go in at night, and as you've tasted, the eggs are delicious. So these are our new babies, just came today. There are 4 companies that control all the grain in the world. Every grain of corn in Indiana to every rice kernel in Vietnam, all is controlled by one of these 4 companies. And they sort of have the world divided up, so if you grow corn in Indiana, you can only sell to Bungle. They've got the processing facility here, so your price is dependent on what they're willing to pay, right? They sell into a commodity market. And there is no alternative for these farmers. So if you can go out there and create these alternatives, like growing non-GMO, but there's got to be a market for it, right? And that's really a big part of our mission, is to get this idea of alternative agriculture kind of out of the hippie granola-y thing, which is all great, but ultimately it's got to scale, right? $16 billion a year is spent on food in Indiana. 97% of that comes from out of state, which means that the segment of today's conventional alternative food is just so tiny, it's not viable. I mean, most of the people you talk to on a farm that's like a sustainable farm probably have jobs, you know, off the farm, and there are very few that actually are sustainable economically. And, you know, what we're trying to do here is create a model for large-scale sustainable alternatives that can actually convince other farmers to come our way.
We produce on pasture cattle, which we have 100% grass-fed cattle. We also have cattle that get some corn as well, and it's non-GMO corn. We also have pigs. They're all raised on pasture. We like black pigs, like heritage breeds like Berkshires, Old Spots, large blacks, things like that. Animals that are a lot hardier, produce a lot of marbling, a darker meat than what a lot of people are used to when they eat pork. And then we raise chickens outdoors. We buy all our grains from our neighbors. We have farms, well, right across the road that supply us with the grains, and we now do our own feed management as well. So we have our own grain bins, we have our own grinders, so we actually are making our own feeds right now, which gives us a lot of autonomy and takes us out of the commodity market and helps us control our costs and our prices a lot better. People buy from us because they think about health claims, or they don't like CAFOs, or they're anti-antibiotic, you know, and we're all of those things as well. But at the end of the day, people buy our food because it tastes better, not necessarily people who are like hardcore foodies, right? Our customer is anyone who eats. And that pie is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
The coffee industry has done an amazing job of creating a smart consumer. The beer, and I mean the craft beer industry, has done an amazing job of creating a smart consumer. You know, there are more beers available in Sun King than there were available to me when I was 21 years old in the entire United States. But the food industry has done an amazing job of dumbing down the consumer and making everything seem like a commodity. And you look out at these animals, and I can tell you when you're eating one exactly everything about that animal. What kind it was, how it was raised, what it ate, you know, and I've got to get the consumer to start appreciating that as well.
A study done by Butler University a few years ago identified that there's 3,800 acres of available land that could be used for farming in Marion County. I think that urban farming or community gardens can be a productive interim use for that land, or long-term use. There's some great small farms that I think have added so much to the vibrancy of their place.
10 years ago, there was one urban farm, you know, now there are 6, 7, and a few of those are really actually for profit, where they're actual businesses and not non-for-profits. And that's just a great thing to see. That's a very strong economic move towards what we need.
The challenge with that is figuring out a system that is a consistent system that where there's a demand for the product that can then support people actually doing this for a living.
The organic movement also works hand in hand with the locavore, or the local movement.
Hoosiers want to see money stay in Hoosier pockets.
It absolutely 100% goes back to your individual choices that you make when you decide what food you want to feed yourself and your family.
It just depends on what you're looking at. And to me, it's much more about who are you supporting, where your dollar's going, and are those people going to spend their dollars back in our community? Or are we just sending money out of state?
So 92% of the agricultural product of Indiana is commodities, and it just leaves the state. And so as a state, we spend about $16 billion on food annually. 14.5 billion of that we actually procure from the outside. So even though we live in a state that has an agricultural heritage, that is, known for being an agricultural state, and we do have great agricultural products, we're not actually buying food from our own production. We, as a state, are really turning down jobs by purchasing food and other things from out of the state instead of motivating and incentivizing and catalyzing our own economic districts here.
And that's why we have to show, almost as a laboratory, the economic model here. You know, one thing about the local food movement is it's a supply problem, not a demand problem. We cannot hang on to the growth. We we can't produce animals fast enough. So this year is really a big year for us because not only do we have our own 5 farms producing, but we're also contracting with other farms, basically raising animals the way we would want them raised, and we inspect, and then they sell us live animals which we process and sell under the Tino Pond label. When we started here, I really wanted to use non-GMO feeds. It was unavailable. I could get it in Michigan, and my whole thing was, is this good? It's non-GMO, but then it has to get on a semi, get hauled down there. There'll be 3 middlemen in between, and it's Michigan, versus my neighbor who I just bought corn from, and he grew GMO. And every year I would nag him, I need non-GMO, I really want non-GMO. 3 years ago, he started growing non-GMO for me. The bigger we get, the more our ecosystem grows, the more partners we need, the more the whole economy is lifted.
What you buy from the farmer helps put clothes on their kids, helps send them to school, helps create family income, helps them buy more acreage or more baby chickens that turn into big chickens that lay eggs. So it is a cycle that helps create community and helps reinvigorate local economies.
Our culture as a society has really moved away from local food. People don't really garden as a part, they're not a part of food production as a regular part of their lives. And because of that, we don't have those pathways already set from childhood on, that it's easy. Oh yeah, you can just go out and pick some tomatoes from the garden. That's not the reality of most folks. I think that's the challenge, is making sure that we can create opportunities to create those pathways again and make sure that people are connecting the dots with the larger food system. And probably the best way to do that is just have folks in some way experience growing food and eating food that is local.
Local food is about the experience, it's about the wonderful taste and the nutrition and the health aspect, but it's also about local economy. It's about the fact that your dollar stays here in the community, it turns over here, we spend money in this community as business owners, and we employ people. Everybody always says, organic food is too expensive. Well, it really isn't when you consider that if organic small family farmers were subsidized at the rate that large monoculture farms are, organic food would be a lot more affordable too. People are so price sensitive about food.
People will see a product and they'll want to know why it's so expensive. But the thing is, for example, when we get kale from South Circle Farm, it is incredibly nutrient dense, so well grown, the soil's amazing, the growing techniques are amazing. Because we're not taking any shortcuts, we're not sneaking anything out the back door. As far as pollution goes, we're taking care of the environment, we're picking the weeds with our hands. It creates so much more of a benefit for everybody when you pay just a little bit more. Local economy, local agriculture, local production, our store, and people's health all benefit.
In the early years of our country, farmers markets were common. They became increasingly common. Every village had one. Then we lost that as grocery stores and big agriculture kind of took over the way we ate. Farmers markets return us not only to a healthier way of eating, but a way for people to make one-on-one connections. And what better way to make a one-on-one connection than with the people who provide you your food? When it comes to local food, we don't have the resources a lot of times that the larger corporations and companies have. So it's harder for people to actually get their food to a point to where it can be distributed. I think distribution is oftentimes the most overlooked aspect of the local food movement. Green bean delivery is a pretty complex business. Started off with a very simple concept and has developed into a leader within the industry of kind of, to your door, farm to fork or farm to table foods. BEAN stands for Biodynamic Education, Agriculture, Nutrition. So it's an acronym.
It's a vertically integrated, sustainable food company. You know, green bean delivery is our bread and butter, obviously, our most well-known brand. That is a business that is basically a network of local farmers and artisans, as well as a full-line, full-service grocery store. What makes us different is that we are a ag company and a tech company. So we network with a lot of different local growers, and then we actually take that product via online orders directly to our members' doors.
Primarily the way we market is we're direct marketers. We have a website, people order online, and we deliver within 50 miles of the farm. Because we get orders coming in online, we have a little preview of what demand is going to be. And so we can process on the fly. Same with the restaurants. If they're out of chorizo, I can make more chorizo. I don't have to decide 6 months ago when I send 20 pigs off to be processed how many pounds of chorizo I'm going to need in March. So we can actually make product to demand. It makes us a lot more efficient. And again, it cuts out a middleman. So there's a margin that gets to stay. So now I can have much more affordable meat at the end.
So Pogues Run is the first project of the Indy Food Cooperative. So it's a full-service grocery store at 2028 East 10th Street in the heart of the Near East Side of Indianapolis. It's Indianapolis's first community-owned grocery store for that. We're owned by just shy of 1,000 members, member households, and that's what creates the equity base for us to be able to have food services in this neighborhood.
So we're at about 950 members right now. That means 950 people, the majority of them living in the Indianapolis area, own this store. It's not in the hands of just a few individuals who are trying to make a lot of money. What that means is that at the point at which we would be making enough money that would be actual termed profit, then the members would decide what we do with that, whether that would be dividends back to them or whether we put that into some more intensive educational programming. People wanted us to be here, they made it happen, and we're here. So that's why we exist.
Obviously, this can't be run off one person's philosophy, and we make sure that it's not. So as an organization, we hold to local first, natural second, organic third.
I mean, we deal with a lot of smaller companies, businesses, farmers, everybody who's doing things that would probably otherwise just sell at a farmer's market. We actually give them an actual retail avenue for them to be able to sell their goods in larger quantities than they could otherwise on their own.
The Good Earth is a natural food company or a health food store. We opened in June of 1971. We were the first health food store here in Indianapolis. We are still local, independent, family owned, and very proud of that as well. We just started our 44th year in business. From the stories that I hear about the opening days, you know, not a lot of customers, not a lot of products. Yogurt, honey, whole wheat bread, you know, things that we think of that any store would have, you know, you really only could find at a health food store. And so in the 70s and the 80s and even the early 90s, before you had the boom of big grocery stores picking up some of these natural items, you really could only find them at health food stores. But I think what you still have with, especially an independent health food store, not necessarily a chain, is one, the relationships with the customers. And really, I like to compare our store to Wikipedia in that we create the outline and we say, this is where we are and these are our shelves and this is kind of the areas we're going to stock. But it's up to the customers that say, you know what, have you ever tried this Greek yogurt from this company, or have you ever tried this product in bulk? And that's how we've kind of filled our shelves over the years, is somebody will say, I want this. And so, you know, I feel like we still have a niche, is that we're there for the customer and what they want, you know, immediately. And especially customers that don't want to do it through the internet, that don't want to have that impersonal feel. They want to have a conversation. And you get to know people, you get to know their health concerns, and you learn from the customers as much as we teach them as well. You know, we pull from some major distributors, but then we're very proud that we carry a lot of local products, even through a local distribution center, and then lots of artisans. We have some Indiana artisan products on our shelves.
Even in '95, for a city where we are, you know, in Indiana, we had a lot of independent health food stores. There was a lot of them. And now there's a couple Whole Foods, there's these, you know, Earth Fairs, and there's these Fresh Times coming in. So there are these big corporate places coming in. So really, ultimately what that's done, I think, is increase the general awareness. It's easier to jump on the let's eat healthy lifestyle bandwagon. Unfortunately, it probably rolls a little to the wealthier household. You know, it's easier for a wealthier household to decide to spend twice the money on organic produce. And I'd like to see it go a little more towards those neighborhoods.
We operate in a food desert, so this was the only opportunity and the only way we could find to make an alleviation of food necessities in this neighborhood. It was to do it through community funding like a cooperative business. To us, it's much more about being here and being able to have options for people who might not have the same transportation as other people's. This is a big walkable district and a big bike district, so people who don't necessarily have as much transportation affluence.
Unfortunately, there is no reality of food access in our neighborhood. The best places for most of our residents to shop for groceries are at least 2 miles away, which is about a 44-minute walk on average for residents. And so what they end up doing is going to the gas stations, liquor stores, the dollar stores, and picking up their kind of basic needs, which then cost them out of having extra money for essentials.
Pogues Run was a great example of a grassroots organization that was then supported citywide by LISC and others to solve a very definite need for that neighborhood. 36% of the residents in Indianapolis suffer from some level of lack of access to healthy and local food. And food deserts is a huge problem, not only in Indianapolis, but in many different cities across the country. We need to make sure that more people have access to healthy food. And to do that, we need to create the infrastructure around production and work on these supply chain issues to make that happen.
The Indy East Food Desert Coalition is a partnership between Forest Manor Multi-Service Center and United Northeast and the Cafe, which is another community center / CDC on Indy's east side. A group of us came together and were concerned because a grocery store had closed in the cafe area. We had no grocery store in our area, and we understood that with the food pantry access and no other options for food, we wanted to figure out a way that we could all come together to increase access and education towards food for the neighborhood. We started off very simple with surveying the neighbors. We did a grocery store tour where we went to kind of your small 8 store up to your grocery store that's 2 miles away to kind of see, even if families were shopping there, did they have access to like the low fat? Did they have a variety of vegetables and fruits in their stands? We also did a study with Butler University to think about what are the needs of the neighbors. Are they driving to the grocery store? Are they walking to the grocery store? Most residents don't have transportation. They're walking to most locations. And so on average, if you're walking or catching public transit to pick up your groceries, you're likely to only buy 2 to 3 bags worth of groceries. And then you'll go to your local store, which is a block away, your dollar store, to then pick up the canned ramen noodles or canned vegetables.
Eskenazi Health is a system. So we have the hospital and we have multiple clinics throughout Indianapolis where we deliver primary care, mental health care. So one of our clinics, the Picar Health Center at 70th and Michigan, is in partnership with Gleaners, Dow Agro, and St. Luke's United Methodist Church in providing a food pantry. And they also have raised bed gardens, so some of the food that will be available, it will be fresh produce that is grown on the premises. When patients are seen for primary care, we screen for food insecurity. So individuals who, are concerned about where their next meal's coming from. And we've been doing that for a long time, but the physicians have said since the food pantry came into being at the health center, that now they're much more likely to act on this information they have because there's something they can do. The physician says, well, now when you're done, just after you check out, go down this hall and turn right and stop in at our food pantry.
The key is You can't just increase food access. You can increase access, and that might not solve any of the health problems, because if folks don't know how to eat the vegetables, they don't know how to cook the vegetables, prepare the vegetables, or just healthy eating isn't a part of their daily lives, it's just not going to help.
Each food issue is unique to individuals, and you have to really realize who those individuals are before you can start helping them to create a change in their life. And you have to do it with compassion and understand that they didn't come from the same thing that everybody else did, or whatever that is. And how do you work forward to find the little small changes that can maybe end up becoming bigger changes?
It's less about giving people information and more about giving people experiences, because that's what really leaves an impact. Growing Places Indy is a nonprofit organization. We're committed to empowering individuals and through individuals' communities to grow well, eat well, live well, and be well.
And it was kind of born out of sort of moving back to the States from Europe, kind of seeing maybe a little bit of opportunity through kind of lack of progressiveness that was happening at that time relative to sort of food and farming and sustainability in Indianapolis. And so we started things off by developing the Indy Winter Farmers Market, and all of that sort of steamrolled into getting into urban agriculture in a pretty significant way.
We have a number of different initiatives through which we pursue really a vision for a city that's vibrant and resilient, in which people can use their relationship to food and self to really live into their vibrancy.
Today, we are packing shoots, pea shoots and sunflower shoots, mild mix and spicy mix for the Indy Winter Farmers Market. When we went to the market last year, we took all the micros as singular things, right? So we took radishes and kale and cabbage and some other things. And basically what people wanted was mix. So we now do a spicy mix and a mild mix. I really wanted to eat better salad mix in the winter. And like most of the things that we've done at Growing Places, like it's something that we first wanted to do, and then we thought, maybe other people would be interested in this too, and it just sort of stepped along. I think our total list of restaurants is somewhere close to 35, but those restaurants that we distribute to kind of on a weekly basis is somewhere around 15. And about 10 of them are really committed, significant purchasers that basically buy the vast majority of what we grow. We grow things that no one else really grows, right? Because we have this amazing climate-controlled greenhouse. And so we can grow throughout the winter shoots and microgreens. And so we, particularly for restaurants that are either just thinking about or just trying to get into local sourcing, we're very easy to work with as just a first step towards local purchasing. One, because these crops are so predictable. We'll have something ready in 1 week or 3 weeks or 5 weeks versus like outdoor conditions, which are pretty unpredictable. Plus, we fill the greenhouse up completely full, so we have a really large stock of crops available. And so what I try to do is have us be their sort of entry point and get them started on microgreens and shoots. And because our outdoor operation is so small and we have these other diversified, we have a farm stand and a U-pick and such, that then I try to connect those restaurants with other local growers who might be able to supply them with crops that we just don't have enough of, right? So this could be squash and cucumbers and tomatoes and field greens and things like that. A lot of restaurants do local beer and local meat and maybe local cheese. But the jump to do vegetables is a kind of a challenging one for them. So I want to make it easy for them. So with microgreens and shoots, we attempt to, and that we are typically able to execute this, that we deliver the same day that we harvest. Very infrequently, but it happens from time to time that we have to harvest the day before, like for the winter market, because the market starts at 9 and
takes us several hours to harvest, so we can't do it the same day.
Yep. And put them towards the left side.
So I think it's like 5 degrees out.
And foolishly or not foolishly, we're still growing vegetables. I'd say it's not so foolishly. I just eat them raw. I eat them like a salad, or you can like fold them into if you're doing an omelet, fold them into an omelet or put them on top. A lot of people just like on sandwiches. We sell to a restaurant that makes hamburgers and they put pea shoots instead of lettuce this time of year. Like a hamburger or something like that. Yep, yep. How are you? Fine. What can I get for you? You want one of those too? All right. I was just, you see what I did there? I was trying to upsell you. We have one for $6 or two for the bargain rate of $12. Wow. It's amazing, no? You know, we're a non-profit farming operation, so basically we sell microgreens to fund our farming operation, and then the extra money goes, we run education programs, so that money goes back to those programs. Yep.
We work with after-school classes in the spring and the summer. So these are students from Near East Side IPS schools that are already coming to the Legacy Center for after-school programming, and some opt to do what we call the Eat Well Club. And so we have about an hour with them, and we divide that time between some sort of getting them into their bodies and kind of out of their heads from school through some simple yoga practices, and then they do an activity in the garden, planting or seeding or harvesting something, and then they enjoy eating a tasting of something from the garden. And it's just so much fun because a lot of these kids don't have a lot of vegetables in their diet, particularly fresh vegetables, and it's just really exciting to see them willing to try those vegetables and excited about it. And we also get to enjoy offering family nutrition and cooking classes at the Legacy Center. So we bring in family units. It might not be, you know, a traditional parents and child. It may be grandparents and children or aunts and uncles, whoever the adult is in the household. And they learn together about some basic nutrition. They take home a share of vegetables that we've harvested for them each week. And they get a few simple breathing and stretching techniques to help with stress reduction and relaxation, and some simple gardening, usually making like a take-home herb pot or something that they can use as an introduction to gardening at home. They're learning by doing. That really helps them to then go home and do it, versus sitting in a group and maybe watching a presentation and then you go home and you're like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense in application the way it made sense in my head.
Working with Eskenazi, working with the Chase Near East Side Legacy Center, working with LISC, all of these very well-known sort of community organizations, that has been a complete surprise in a really great way. And I feel like in many ways it's sort of legitimized this little thing that Laura and I came up with in our heads in our dining room one evening.
We're not raised to really listen to our bodies or to pay attention or to let our intuition inform us about what makes us feel really good when we eat it and what makes us feel poorly.
I think educating the kids is the way to go. If you can get 15% of the youth to latch onto these ideals, then you're going to see a lot more growth.
One of the beautiful things about a school compared to a lot of other ways of introducing food is that parents are in and out of the school all the time, community agencies are in and out of the school all the time. It's really a center of community life, and we have very few of those anymore compared to what there used to be maybe 50, 60 years ago. So I think there's like 3 major issues that students are facing with food access. One is education. So why do I need to eat healthy food? What is healthy food? The second is physical access. So where is it? How do I get it? And like, can I afford it? And then the third are skills. So once I have it, what do I do with it? How do I prepare it? How do I grow it?
And so for some of the things that are happening at our schools, our school next door has a community garden that they host, and the kids tend to it each week and then take the vegetables home with them. The Tinley School, which is behind us, they also did a farm stand for us. We were able to receive fresh fruit and vegetables from Indianapolis Fruits and Vegetables, and they then the students then kind of helped set up like a farm stand, and they would give the food away and then talk to the families about, hey, this is what we should do with those.
This is a place where I think we have a lot of power to affect really wide-scale change in the food system, as long as our children are sort of the starting point for that conversation.
But you have to saw, you cannot chop. So get a good grip and then saw it like this. I kind of want to see your technique, Elijah. Can you pick one of those 4 peppers and cut it? She'll do the other 3.
What I like about being part of the cooking club is that you get to learn how to cook food that you're not used to cooking. Because, like, I'm used to cooking food with meat and not all this vegetables. Like, I'm a vegetable person, but, like, I don't cook all vegetables. But when you cook with vegetables, you can find out new things. Like, you find out, like, the spaghetti squash. It's noodles inside there. You can mix with all types of vegetables, and many vegetables has a lot of flavor to it. So it doesn't matter if you're cooking with meat or not. Both are gonna have flavor to it. So I'll just say both of them's good, I guess.
I want to see the end product. I don't need to see the process. Man. Do you want me to watch the process?
No.
Okay.
I want to see how he want to be boss.
Oh, wait, stop. Now that I'm watching the process, you're never going to have your thumb in the line of fire like that. All right, watch out. Yo, that was better already.
I know how to cut, Mr. Sean.
Okay, so here's what I...
put the cut like this.
Good, okay, cool. So you know, you just got to do it. Nice. Can you add the carrots into... Cool, to this pan?
I like the way it sounds when you,
Grind spices?
No.
Oh.
When you, when you're cutting it.
So what I want is, do you see how she's like keeping all the pieces together? And then just yeah. The reason is that we're gonna kind of stew this down, and already these pieces are pretty big. So it won't stew down very well if there's too much stuff going on. Can I get your bowl of bell peppers? Because we gotta saute that next. Are you still doing carrots? Thank you.
Did you put some salt in it?
Damon, do you want to grind some more of the seasoning on there after you put that in?
What's up? Okay.
Oh my God. Cool.
Can you move the spatula?
Perfect. Boy, yeah, add some in. Can you put, one of you put those tomatoes in here? That works. Thanks, Brianna. Stop there.
We need a spoon.
No. In here.
Oh, you have a potato peeler?
That's like a cheese slicer?
Oh, I like it though.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. All right, man. Can you stir this around? You're pretty good at this. You're good at like 98% of the things you do. But you probably just jinxed yourself. Taco seasoning. We need more.
Like I said.
You're right. Every time you're right.
Every time. Whatever, quick. What you do is you don't want to put too much, just sprinkle it in. Like dig it in there and give me some food, yeah. Don't worry, I have no problem with it. And I would like some soup.
Good. It would be even better with the rice and beans and stuff, so that's on me. I'm sorry. But
I need this
I would like a little
protein.
bit more
No,
soup.
not the black beans.
that's the best kind of beans.
No, you didn't get no juice.
I'll get a little juice.
I don't want no juice.
I had a student who we had done a couple of recipes, and I got an email from his mom a couple weeks later where she had a young child, and the baby was crying in a crib, and she had to go upstairs while she was preparing a meal. She came back downstairs, and her son had finished preparing everything, and she was just so surprised because he didn't know how to do any of that before. but he had learned it in this club. And that kind of introduction and that kind of exposure is really what I think is going to lead to a transformational change.
Folks need to understand how to actually prepare the items that they receive. And not only that, then also think about, what's the healthy option to making green beans, or what's the healthy option to making greens. There's a lot of great options available. And so that's why we're looking at partnerships like with the YMCA and HealthNet and the Marion County Public Health Department, because they bring that education piece to the neighborhood to encourage a lifelong learning of eating healthier.
So anchor institutions are organizations like hospitals and big universities that are really big employers, really big purchasers of goods, and they have a lot of purchasing power and just a lot of economic impact on Indianapolis. The strategy around anchor institution procurement is to say, hey hospital, hey university, you want to do good, you're not going anywhere, you really want Indianapolis to be a thriving, vibrant place full of great people that have great jobs in a sustainable place. Could you think about your procurement and be more strategic about it and create the supply chain for local food in Indianapolis? So Eskenazi is one of those anchor institutions.
We're standing on the Sky Farm, which is on top of our outpatient care center, and this is where we grow produce that we pick and rinse off and serve throughout our hospital.
The Eskenazi Health Sky Farm is basically a space on top of a roof where we are growing vegetables, herbs, and a few fruits, and all of that is going to the hospital in some form. Some of it's going to the cafeteria, some of it's going to the restaurant. Another portion is going to a couple of food and nutrition classes here where the students get the food and learn what to do with it. We basically operate to supply as much food as we can to the hospital, but it's very much an educational space as well.
Part of what we're doing up here, we're capitalizing on what we think of as a teachable moment, recognizing that there are events in people's lives that cause them to think differently, and that's an opportunity to introduce a new idea. And so we think of being in the hospital as a teachable moment. So someone who ends up in the hospital because of a heart attack, a stroke, or pneumonia, having survived and now recovering from that problem, it's likely that they're thinking something different than they were before they landed in the hospital, and they will be once they go home. But that's an opportunity that we have to introduce them, while they're more receptive, they're thinking in a way that would make them more receptive to this message of change, and be reminded, as we're working on the education, of the benefits of real food.
So one of the best things about having a farm at a hospital is making that connection between myself, I know a lot about food, I know a lot about vegetables, and the patients that come here that need to learn about food as medicine and food as their nutrition to help their health. So I run some gardening classes up here, and we have the food and nutrition classes as well. And they come up here and kind of visit and see what the food looks like on the vine, what a beet might look like in the ground, and just making that association. And then they go back into their class and they cook, or someone else cooks, and they get to try what they got from the Sky Farm. So they're making that full round correlation there. Just having that conversation with someone that doesn't normally get to interact with food when it's at this stage. A lot of people are tasting things that are frozen or out of a can and not directly out of the ground, and there's a huge taste difference, and it has changed people's minds. It's very simple up here. Somebody could just be coming up here to sit and relax and get away from the hospital, but because this is here in this space, it can't be ignored. So that's how I feel like the hospital is kind of confronting and introducing food as medicine.
As a healthcare system, they have the ability to even expand that footprint.
We commissioned a study to determine how far we could take this notion of procuring local food. That we need a reliable supply, so we need to know that we're going to, get so much lettuce and so much kale or so many tomatoes or snap peas or green beans or whatever. The growers need a reliable demand. They need to know if they grow this, that we will purchase it. So we're working out that loop.
I had a venture capitalist tell me once, Chris, you're a guy that wants to dig a canal when there's a perfectly good river flowing right here. So a lot of our initial efforts were trying to get people to cook, and we talked about, we had a hashtag, make dinner normal. And the reality is people don't really want to cook that much. They want to eat out, they want their food delivered. And that's sort of the river instead of the canal. The canal is, we need more people cooking. But the reality is that we'll get the people cooking, but we also have to have another channel. And that's another place where the restaurants fit in.
Indianapolis' food scene is starting to really get going. When there was a lot of places opening up. You had the Bluebeard and Rook and a lot of these other places really getting going.
My involvement in the community has really been about education. So through my own health journey, I found kind of what it meant to eat clean and eat raw foods and how it could heal the body. And I had the desire to want to bring that to the community. So I was working in corporate America, and I really did enjoy my job at the time, but I knew that there was something better for me, and I knew that I was really good at teaching and had a passion for wanting to share this. So I found out about this school in California, and I thought about it for a while, talked to my husband about it, and was like, you know what, I think I want to go to this school in California and become a chef. I've always been passionate about what's going to happen with the next generations, what's going to happen with the people, the children now, what kind of world are we going to leave them with? And it just, of course, heightened once I got pregnant and knew this baby was coming into the world. It just ingrained it even more in me that I wanted to do this, and I think that's really where I got the spark that, okay, I might be bringing a baby into the world right now, but there's something else I need to be doing. Like, it's immediate that we need to do something about this, and that's where Ezra's was kind of like birthed. Part of what we're doing at Ezra's is teaching classes. They're going to be small classes where people can come in and they learn how to make, 2 or 3 items. We talk about the benefits of the ingredients. We talk about how easy it is to make it. We get to taste the food, and we get to have a conversation. Ezra's Cafe that we're opening now is just the seed to something much larger. And my true passion, my true calling is education, really. Educating people on how to feel better. So I want to bring that community into our education piece and allow the people who want to be, to come to Ezra's and learn, to not only learn it from us, but to also experience it from the other amazing experts in the community too.
I think getting people to support locally owned restaurants is the first step in getting them to support locally raised food. I think, we can't get the donkey ahead of the cart. And I think local restaurants are proud of what it is. And they have that relationship with the farmer.
It's extremely important to me to visit the farms that we're working with, to actually be there, to smell the dirt and smell the manure and see the cows, see the pigs. And we're seeing how the animals are, and the plants and the farmer all work together in symbiosis to create this farm and to create this food that is truly sustainable and truly nourishing the earth rather than taking away from the earth. And we're helping them, they're helping us. It just feels like this give and take wonderful relationship.
We live in the breadbasket of the United States. Michelin-rated restaurants in Chicago are sourcing their proteins from Indiana because we raise great cattle, great pork, great duck here. The vegetables that we produce are fantastic. I mean, the bounty that's available here is amazing. I feel like restaurant owners and chefs want to showcase that, and they should be proud of it. There's no reason why I ever need to get a tomato from Texas or Mexico. It's ludicrous to even think that would be an option.
When you start eating, particularly a plant-based diet, a whole food plant-based diet where you're eating a lot of fruits and vegetables, and particularly if you're able to go to maybe farmers markets, or at least you're doing a lot of it yourself and you're chopping, it is very difficult not to create this deeper connection with the earth. And when we are in a space of eating processed foods and we're getting our food from a fast food restaurant, we're getting a lot of our food from boxes and we're going home and maybe even eating it in the car, or we're getting pizza delivered, there is absolutely zero connection to the people who grew that food there is no connection to that because it's a completely different entity at that point. We're not touching it, we're not feeling it, we have no hand in preparing that food. It just comes to us like just this magic thing, and all of a sudden it's there and we consume it, and with no other thought, and then we go on about our day. When we're doing that, we are separating ourselves from the earth, and we're separating ourselves from each other. The more we eat the whole foods and the plant-based foods, we have a deeper connection with the earth, and then we become more connected with each other. And the more connected we are with the earth and the more connected we are with each other, the less easy it is to harm the earth, the less easy it is to harm each other.
Food, historically speaking, for the last 10,000 years is how we socialized and how we bonded.
It's a cultural impact, not just a food access impact. You see families out there tending the gardens together, youth, seniors who have the best, knowledge anyway. I mean, they've slapped my hands on how to pull greens a couple times out there. And so having that kind of intergenerational opportunity through gardening is huge and important for our neighborhoods.
My next door neighbors and I, we exchange stuff nonstop. We are always trading food. It's like, hey, I came home from the market today and I've got way too many mushrooms. Do you want some? It's like, yeah, I've got a bunch of cucumbers. That's where food for me is that's how I bond with my friends. That's how, whether it be barbecues or going out to dinner or breakfast or lunch. And I would love to see, as a society, we got back to not just forcing food into our mouths for sustenance and really sitting down and spending that time together, turning the TVs off at dinner. When I think of food and community, that's how I look at it, just fellowship.
One of the things that I think is really hard for us to nail down as teachers is how to teach life skills and also teach content. Teaching content is really, really easy, but it's a lot harder when students don't have life skills. And we try to teach them explicitly, here's what integrity is, here's what honesty is, and it just really doesn't work very well because students don't have a chance to apply it. And one of the most meaningful ways to apply it, I think, is through the food system. There's really very few other avenues where students can get an understanding of hospitality, respect for the land, a understanding of space and how to use it to serve people well. The food system just spans so many elements of society. And it's found in schools when it comes to the school lunch system. It's found in churches, it's found in commerce and economics. It's found in so many elements of society that when you think about being a responsible human, serving other people, leaving a place better than you found it in the context of the food system, and then also the added bonus of being able to eat stuff that tastes good, it really hooks in students into just becoming better people.
When people come out here, we get on the hayride, I get their kids up there, and we take them around, you just see them light up. And it's not just the kids, it's the adults too. A lot of times I'll make an example and I'll pull something out of the field and I'll show the kid and have you ever seen this before? And they've never seen it before. And it's a new experience. And in the background, I can see their parent acting like they've seen it before, but they've never seen it either. So it's just the growth of understanding that these resources are valuable to our community, whether it's the farmer's market or whether it's, you get your product from Green Bean or whether you're a CSA person, whether you're a gardener. To me, it doesn't matter. I mean, as long as you're supporting the overall system and you're supporting family farms, that's what's important.
It's that ripple effect, you spread the information and people get excited, it touches people's lives and then they spread it to others. And so naturally then the whole community, little by little, starts to learn and that information's available out there. Our larger community and our larger society is a reflection from the individual person's inner consciousness and inner wisdom.
If we are not speaking kindly to ourselves in our own head, then we're not treating our bodies well. And chances are we're not treating others as well as we could either, because all of that then affects our community. It affects how we relate to the people closest to us as well as the people that we just happen to encounter in our day. It affects how we show up at work and how much we feel we have to offer in the community. And then all of that compounds to affect, crime rates and domestic violence and depression, anxiety, and suicide rate. It goes from the individual to all of our collective societal concerns.
And when people are happy, they're less likely to start to commit crimes. If their kids are hungry, they're less likely to be a challenge in school. You know, when they're being fed during the summer, they're less likely to be truant during the school year.
Everybody eats. And you look at, again, societal problems like healthcare. You know, why can the French afford to take care of their people and we can't? Our people are sicker, right? I mean, that's at its core, we have sicker people. Why do we have sicker people? Well, it really has to go back to the food that we eat and the way things are processed. You know, I just believe that overall, if we fix the food system, we fix the entire society.
It feels really transformative what's been happening over the last couple of years in Indianapolis.
I think it's the beginning of the big change that Indiana really needs, because we are the 41st unhealthiest state in America, and we are the 8th most obese, and we can't blame anything other than food and inactivity.
There's certainly far more independent restaurants over the last 5, 6, 10 years. More restaurants that are not necessarily independent restaurants that are starting to buy local. All of the microgreens and shoots that you see around have been a good entry for them into buying local.
All of these things are only possible because, on the one hand, people in Indianapolis like to work together and like to help people out. And that's just like this attitude in the city that I absolutely love. But also because there is a movement around food. And there are a lot of people who've been thinking about this for much longer than I've been alive. And in doing so, they've developed a lot of resources and a lot of institutions and a lot of structures. And what they really need now are schools and other kinds of agencies that serve youth to get on board.
I mean, my dream would be, let's say in the next couple decades, that Indianapolis is the place for urban farming. In addition to auto racing and conferences, you know, it's the place that people come to because they're interested in urban agriculture. And if that can be embedded in what's happening in the city, then what are all the other effects, right? There's better restaurants, there's more farmers markets, there's more farm stands, there's a more sort of community-based food system that we're eating from versus sort of importing food from here, there, and everywhere when we can just simply grow it here.
I think that the palate and level of sophistication and education and interest that the average diner has now versus 5 to 10 years ago is greatly improved.
You know, when I started, I remember I had some customers call me and ask me about kale, and they asked me if it was the, you know, garnish on the side of the Denny's plate, right? Is that the same thing? And I said, no, you can eat this on your own, and it's not a garnish. It's a very nutritious and great meal. You just have to know how to cook it. I'd like to think we're a big part of that. A lot of organizations are a part of that within Indianapolis that are just raising the bar of education and allowing consumers and community members to just think outside of the box a little bit when it comes to nutrition.
You know, you look at a place like Ezra's, we couldn't have supported a raw vegan restaurant 5, 6 years ago, but now we can. Like, they're doing a great business.
We're growing so quickly that it's hard to even say what we're going to be like in 3 years. The growth that I've seen since I've lived here for 10 years, and it's a completely different city now.
I think people are starting to understand the importance of supporting family farms and inviting them into their homes.
I'm not pessimistic about anything in this business. I mean, we're investing literally millions of dollars because we believe it's a great business too.
To me, what's exciting about the changes that are happening in Indianapolis is that there's a group of people who care and they're not willing to stop.
It's a good challenge. I think we've got a lot of talented people, a lot of bright people in this city that can figure this out if we work together to figure it out.
We're not willing to settle for what we've been given.
There's a theory of movements. There's the innovators. These are the folks that first do something, that think up some interesting idea and go for it, and they're really bold and courageous. There's early adopters, there's late adopters, and there's laggards. So in the food movement, we have a lot of innovators right now in Indianapolis. But what's great is that the early adopters are actually already here. And the early adopters are the key. Innovators are great, but if you don't have the early adopters, those folks that validate that idea, that take it to the next level, that think about it some more, flesh it out, make it acceptable for the society at large, then you don't ever get the late adopters. So as individuals, your choices about where you buy your food, and who you support are really critical and can make a huge difference.
When you talk about hope, it goes back to individual people and their choices. I have a lot of faith in people and the way that they want to see their food.
I truly believe that if we make healthful food available, make it attractive, make it taste good, prepare it at a price point that people can afford, make the case for why it's important, create the environment that encourages the healthful behaviors, that people will naturally gravitate to the behaviors that enhance health. And we're learning that, we're seeing that.
No one can change us. We have to choose to change ourselves.
And if we can do that broadly as a community, as a hospital, as urban farms, as restaurants, you name it, as family units, as fitness centers, community centers, all of these things, if we can sort of model systems and behaviors that are healthy, more community-minded, probably better, then people can sort of come to that at the point that they want versus saying, you should do this, because we all react to that in negative ways. But if we commit to these little incremental changes, you look back in a decade and you think, wow, things are totally different. And never once along the way did it feel like that big of a deal. But if I look at all of those decisions as a whole, it's a pretty big deal.
Wasting away, I ain't seen the sun. Cloudy days are the only when I step out on the street. Whistling wind through my window, ice cream man song playing again and again and again and again. You find me cooking in the kitchen alone. You find me cooking in the kitchen alone. You find me cooking in the kitchen alone. I'll be baking my biscuits alone. Old neighborhood bar, my best friend, right around the corner there and back again and again and again. Dishing out catch, drown my sorrow. Ain't gotta worry, don't care about tomorrow. No, no, no. You find me cooking in the kitchen alone. You find me cooking in the kitchen alone. You find me cooking in the kitchen alone. I'll be baking my biscuits alone. Cooking in the kitchen alone. You find me cooking in the kitchen alone. You find me cooking in the kitchen alone. I'll be baking my biscuits alone.